that definitely is something that the examiners would like to hear. Let's begin. This is the speaking examination of the International English Language Testing System. It was free-flowing, the thoughts were very organized, and he was speaking with such ease and dexterity.
Welcome to 9.09ers YouTube channel. Once again, we shall be having a demonstration of the speaking subtest with me, Sir Pheelyp, and with my partner here, Sir Brian. Hi. I believe we've done this already before.
Oh yes, plenty of times actually.
Many times, and we're going to do it again today. In the speaking test, in the IELTS exam, there are 3 parts. Would you care to refresh us, Sir Brian, what these are?
Part 1 is your introduction and interview, in which you're going to be asked questions about yourself. Then we have part 2, in which you're going to be provided a topic. This is your individual long term, and you have to speak for 1 to 2 minutes. And part 3 is going to be the discussion part, in which the examiner is going to ask you more abstract questions related to part 2, but not necessarily follow-up questions to the second part of the examination.
Indeed. And it's a very different experience just reading these requirements and descriptions in a book or the website and seeing it actually happen in real time with total spontaneity and lack of preparedness. This is not something that Sir Brian and I scripted ahead of time, but this is something that we have no idea what's going to happen next. I'm quite excited to see what questions I'm going to ask.
I am too.
Okay, so let's give them a show. Shall we begin?
All right.
Okay, I shall be the candidate, and Sir Brian over here will be the examiner.
All right. Let's begin. This is the speaking examination of the International English Language Testing System. Can I have your full name, please?
My full name is Pheelyp Edward Cruz Aytona.
Can you show me some identification?
Here you go.
Thank you. In this first part of the examination, I'm going to ask you questions about yourself. Pheelyp, I would like you to talk about your hometown. Can you describe to me the town or the city where you grew up?
Certainly. The city that I grew up in is Quezon City in the Philippines. Specifically, I grew up in Loyola Heights, Quezon City. This is a very quiet, peaceful, and orderly neighborhood. It's right in front of Ateneo de Manila University and near the University of the Philippines, which are premier universities in the country. This makes the community very orderly and law-abiding because it's full of students and people who cater to their needs as well. And I think it's important that people are able to grow up in such a place, in such a neighborhood, so that they would learn from an early age that people are essentially good, that people will not harm you, you can walk at night, for example, without anyone stabbing you, which I understand is a very different experience compared to some of other people in the country. So I love being, I'm very grateful for the fact that my childhood was like that, growing up in this neighborhood.
Would you recommend this place to anyone who would like to live in your country?
Definitely. This is precisely as I was saying earlier, this kind of environment is the ideal one for a child to grow up in because it helps foster at one's formative years that people are essentially good and can be trusted as well. The fact that most of the environments that children grow up in are not like this is something that needs to change.
Okay. Now let's move on to talk about tea and coffee. Do people in your country drink tea or coffee more?
Definitely coffee more. Tea is an affectation. It's for sophisticated people to a large extent, whereas coffee is ubiquitous. It can be found everywhere from 10 peso Nescafe to 170 peso Starbucks drinks as well. Although I would like to point out that milk tea is becoming more and more popular nowadays. I believe that I know a fellow lecturer, his name is Brian Shawson, who is very fond of milk tea as well. And I think that what's important is that people are able to know what they truly like and not just feel forced to join the bandwagon just because the rest of their friends drink it, then they have to.
If you have guests who come over, would you offer them tea or coffee?
I would offer them both and then let them decide which one they prefer more. And that's why we always keep both available.
Okay. And do you think that tea or coffee would be more popular among children or younger individuals compared to older individuals?
To an extent, yes. Because adults tend to be the ones who drink coffee more often because sometimes they do it not for social reasons but for functional reasons because they need to stay awake. Same thing with tea because tea has caffeine too. So because children lack this reason, this additional reason to consume these beverages, then probably the frequency with which they do so is quite lower compared to adults.
Okay. Now let's move on to talk about computers.
Sure.
Do you often use the computer?
All the time. Especially during this time of pandemic in which we're all confined to our homes. The manner in which we conduct work, to order food, and to conduct lectures, it all happens through technology, mediated through these devices. I think that this is a good thing and a bad thing. It's good because it allows us to connect despite the necessary distancing that we need to be doing in order to preserve our health. But it's also bad in one sense because we're lacking the physical proximity to each other, which are necessary in order for us to preserve our mental health, for example, because we're all animals who need connection with each other in order to be safe, as well as the fact that, especially for children, they may be stunted in their interpersonal development because they're not getting the needed physical interaction with other people. So it's a good thing and a bad thing.
Do most people in your country have access to computers?
Yes and no. I guess it depends on what you count as a computer. Desktop computer or a laptop, definitely that's not very common. But if you talk about smartphones, I think that a large percentage of the country have access to this. Even if you don't own one yourself, there are internet shops that allow one to rent these devices because a lot of people in my country are on Facebook. And I think that's a pretty good metric to determine access to computers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now I'm just going to give you a topic. I would like you to talk about this for 1 to 2 minutes.
Sure.
But before that, I'm going to give you 1 minute to think about what you're going to say and to make some notes if you wish. Do you understand?
I do.
Here's a piece of paper and a pencil, just in case you wish to write some notes.
Sure.
And here's your topic. I would like you to talk about a person or a family member who is an achiever.
Okay. May I begin?
Prepare, sure. Okay, Philip, that's the end of your 1 minute.
Okay.
May I just remind you that you have 1 to 2 minutes to answer this question. Now, do not worry if I stop you. I will tell you when your time is up. Can you start speaking now?
The person who is an achiever, who is a family member of mine, is a cousin. Her name is Pheelyp Aytona. She has so many achievements that I don't think I'm going to have enough time to tell you about all of them. But what comes to mind is that she has a very high academic grades. She graduated, I don't know what the Latin honor is, but it's very, very prestigious. She is a certified public accountant, and right now she's taking up law as well. So she's going to be a CPA and a lawyer at the same time. And while doing all of these things, she has also been joining pageants. For example, the pageant she most recently won is Miss BIR, I believe, because she works in the Bureau of Internal Revenue now, which is a very important title because she is the ambassador to the rest of the department to demonstrate the values that the agency has. She cooks for her loved ones. She finds time to exercise. So many achievements. And I think that what she had to do in order to accomplish all of these things are, well, equally many as well. But what comes to mind is her willingness to sacrifice, her willingness to delay gratification by investing the hours that are needed, putting in the work, reading the books, even when it's not easy, especially when it's not easy. so that in the future she would be able to harvest all of these medals and all of these recognitions. And a person like that is very easy to admire, definitely. Not only because of these visible marks of victory, but more of the background work, the invisible sacrifices that need to be done.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now I'm just going to ask you one or two more general questions about what we have talked about so far. And we have been talking about a person, particularly a family member that you know who is an achiever. I would like to talk more about achievements in your country.
Sure.
What kinds of achievements are important for people in your country?
There are many. And it truly depends who you ask. A poor person, for example, an achievement for him would be being able to feed his family for another day. Somebody who is more financially stable, perhaps an achievement for him is not being forced to lay off his employees despite the difficulties that this pandemic has foisted on us. I think that what all achievements have in common that my countrymen value is the necessity for sacrifice in order to achieve them. Because if there's no adversity that is overcome, then it's not really an achievement at all.
Now you're talking about the motivations of people to achieve something. Now what do you think are the other motivators for people to achieve success?
Well, some people, they rely on success in order to compensate for some perceived failing or deficiency on their part. Perhaps they were neglected as a child, or perhaps they were disappointed in a relationship. And instead of focusing on this hurt, they rather redirect their energies to getting these achievements, so that people would focus on these things rather than doing the more difficult work of coming to terms with whatever hurt them in the first place. So it's a band-aid, these trophies and these diplomas and these awards sometimes.
Yeah. Now, do you think that parents should force their children to become achievers?
Definitely not. I think that parents should, instead of imposing that they achieve, but they should rather be supportive of their children, because if they're able to provide the necessary help and encouragement and affirmation, then these children's skills will naturally blossom, will naturally make themselves known. So that instead of imposing a particular path for their children to follow and achieving in a particular way that they want their children to do, then whatever strengths and preferences their offspring will have is what will come out. And it's always easier to achieve things when you're being who you are.
Right. How do people in your country celebrate achievements?
Definitely with pancit. Pancit is a traditional Filipino dish that is very long, and it is a typical food. It's a typical dish that is served in lots of festivals and lots of celebrations as well, like birthdays, anniversaries, etc.
Do you think it's important to celebrate a person's achievements?
Of course, because this affirms not only the achievement itself, but everything else that went into it. The public validation of one's efforts is needed, not only to encourage similar behavior in the future, but also to serve as inspiration for everybody else who witnesses this celebration, because it would be very clear to them that this thing is valued, that this thing is important in society, and they would end up thinking that maybe they could do the same thing. However, I would like to point out that the proper things need to be celebrated. Unfortunately, sometimes what is celebrated are things that are not really supposed to be validated. For example, very superficial things like beauty, things like this. Like you get the more likes you have, the more shares you have in your video. If you show some skin, or if you just make people laugh with very shallow humor, things like this. People therefore get the mistaken notion that these things are what's worthwhile, rather than things like courage, sacrifice, gratitude. So we as a society should definitely recalibrate and celebrate the proper achievements so that we could have a better society.
Thank you, Pheelyp. That's the end of your speaking examination.
Not so bad.
Right? That's really good.
Thank you.
So let's point out some of the good things that Pheelyp has shown us.
I hope
As
there are many.
there are plenty, actually. Firstly, it sounded very natural. It was free-flowing. The thoughts were very organized, and he was speaking with such ease and dexterity. I really love that. Oh,
wow. What a big word.
Yes. And another thing is that everything sounded very clear. His pacing is not too fast. It has the correct intonation and correct pronunciation of words, and everything was delivered in a very conversational manner. It sounded very interested, and he seemed very committed and very how do you call this?
Go on. I'm just waiting for it to run.
He sounded very confident. There was no ounce of hesitation in that kind of performance, and that definitely is something that the examiners would like to hear. It's very refreshing to hear a candidate who speaks his or her thoughts with such confidence. And examiners will find that very remarkable, and in the pool of candidates who will be performing the same way, this will stand out and definitely will get a better score compared to the rest of the candidates who are taking the examination on a certain test date. So, guys, that's how you ace your IELTS speaking examination and get a band 9 in your examination. Sir Pheelyp here has never gotten lower than a perfect score in any of his English exams for speaking.
Thankfully, I doubt that you would be needing a perfect score yourself. You're not headed to Pluto, I imagine. No? I doubt any of our students are headed that far. No? So the good news there is that you don't necessarily have to demonstrate this kind of delivery, right, Sir Brian?
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Definitely.
definitely. And if you would examine the band descriptors in the IELTS website, the topmost ranks for 9.0 with fluency, grammar, pronunciation, they allow a certain room for error. You have space for mistakes. There are slips that you're allowed to make. Did I make some slips and some hesitations earlier?
There might have been a few,
Yeah.
but remember, even native English speakers make those mistakes. So in IELTS, you're not expected to be perfect,
Indeed.
but you're expected to actually perform in a way that you're able to communicate the message across.
It's a holistic assessment. It's the evaluation takes into context the entire performance that you offer during the test. And therefore, this is something that we practice a lot in 9.09. Coaching is available from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day.
Yes,
every day?
Mondays to Sundays.
Mondays
in
to
fact.
Sundays. Amazing, Sir Brian.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so you could have this coaching, a similar experience every single day. And practice is what makes perfect. English, after all, is a skill like anything else. And the more that you do it, the better you get. Wouldn't you agree, Sir Brian?
Definitely.
Yeah.
With more practice, you can definitely get a better score. But of course, before you practice, you need the proper guidance. And that's what we provide here at 9.09 or IELTS Review and Tutorial Center. We guide and hone our students to perform their best during their English exams.
So we look forward to meeting you in our programs, and hopefully we would see you there. We look forward to working with you.
You can also visit our website at www.nineronlinereview.com or email us at training@nineronlinereview.com. And guess who replies to all of these?
Who replies, Sir Brian?
Us, the lecturers.
Yeah, so we are really hands-on when it comes to taking care of you. Why work with anybody else but the best?
See you in our future video.
Thank you for watching.